Good morning. My name's Synchronize, and today I had a really interesting idea. So I was I was looking at old Christian, uh just the stories and whatnot, the mythology, and learning like what their understanding of hell was. And now this is gonna sound outrageous, but I I personally have come to believe that well, not fully believe, but it's an interesting thing I've thought about, which is I believe that what happens in the human mind. Every time I draw it, looks more like either poop or I don't know. I can't draw a brain, but every time you have a thought, you're gonna have a thought, and you're gonna be presented with two options when that thought comes into your mind. What's gonna happen is you're gonna be presented with two options to either just listen or talk. Now, what's gonna happen is if you just listen, because everyone, I think it's like 98% of people or something, they talk to themselves in their head. So you don't have to feel like ashamed of it. Everyone does it. So um it's gonna when a thought comes into your mind, it's going to you want to try to do the listen side as much as you can. The listen side is the virtuous side, if you will, to just entertain the thought. Just listen to it and extract information you want from it. And they're usually really, really good thoughts, those ones. If you just listen and it's doing it, listen to that thought. It is insanely good to entertain those thoughts. You'll self teach yourself a lot if you entertain those thoughts. The other option is to actually talk to it. So sometimes it might say something and then it's like a little ambiguous, you don't understand, and this is where the danger lies. I believe this is what a lot of people have fallen the pitfall of the trap for, is they talk to it, and when you talk to it, you're playing a devil's game. Because what's gonna happen is, if you listen, there's not really much you can do, but this is where Dante's Inferno, I believe, comes into play. The old Greek and Christian mythology around it, because I've been playing around with this. So I just want to make sure I can find a decent image here. Yeah, so the more you talk to it, the more you're going to be playing the devil's game. So limbo is where this is. This is limbo. This is where you can either choose to listen or talk to it. And this is where I believe most of Christianity's like we seem to take it as literal, but I think it's actually metaphorical in my opinion. So like Moses parting the um ocean in half or whatever, the sea, and that's where it's teaching you to separate these ideas so you can learn properly. Because if you don't do this, you're going to learn very, very badly. And it's going to set you up for really, really bad failures in future. So this is where it's like the sins come in. So it's like, are you going to let your lust for that? So the first sin here is this is virtuous and this is lust. Now, I do have a diagram to explain this. So, I've transcribed this, if you will, into the emotion charts, because this is where I truly believe that it's come into. I've been starting to do it this way, and it's been insanely. I don't know how to describe it. You just, it's like your eyes just open. It's like, the whole third eye opening thing. It's quite literally like that. And I want to, you can entertain this if you want. You don't have to believe me. But this is where the sins and the emotions come in. Because when you think about it, the emotions obviously are just, how else would you sin if you didn't have emotions, basically? Or how else would you be virtuous if you didn't have emotions? So that's where it's tied to, is your emotion state. It's kind of blurry here, but I have it off to the side so I can read it, so it makes more sense. So, yeah, so you're here. This is the starting point down here. This is a distraction. Some random thought has come into your mind. So, this is limbo, if you will. You've not sinned, but you've not been virtuous either yet. So you can just listen to it, and that is how you actually do the virtuous way. It's like a video game path, if you will, if you want to think of it that way. When you can quite literally, if you probably play a lot of video games, it might actually help to think of it like that, like a dialogue option with yourself. I haven't tried that. I'll try that and see if that works. Maybe like a self dialogue. But yeah. So if you we'll do the sinful path first, because this is probably where most people are, is they've done this by accident and not realized. And now they're in hell. Basically, their mind is in hell. Well, it would be described as here. So you come down here. This is the sin of lust. You lusted for that knowledge. Now, you're still okay. This is where Pandora's box is as well, I believe. This is like you're starting to wriggle that open, that Pandora's box, by doing this. And you then enter like sadness if you're not careful, which is where you got an answer you didn't want to hear, and that was yourself. You actually self-inserted that answer, but you didn't. It sounded like it was your brain telling you that. Isn't that weird? Why did you listen to it in the first place if it was you? It's you. It's two beings inside of you. It's like your brain is actually a separate being, and you have to kind of listen to it when it talks. You can't not listen to it, because that is like it's like, think of it like it's God, and then when it's giving you information, just shut up. But you can entertain the thoughts. If you are a very sound, rational mind person who understands logical fallacies to a T, you can start entertaining these thoughts, and this is where you get like your creative people. These are people who entertain these thoughts and can actually control their emotions to the point where they extract information out of this awful state of mind. What I would call it is, this is the absurd. So you're entertaining like really absurd thoughts. So when you think absurd, you can't describe the absurd. It just, until you can visualize it. So what you have to do is, if you have really good visualization skills, you go down this path, and then you can actually learn so much from entertaining these dark, evil thoughts of yourself. It's like quite literally like listening to that devil, but not actually believing it, because you need to know when to believe it and when not to believe it. Because you can imagine God is still there with you, and it will tell you. It's like playing the this one's a liar and that one's the truth teller, or whatever. and it's like one of them's a liar and one of them is a truth teller, and you have to figure that riddle out. You can do that. They'll will leave traces behind it. It's like, but that doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, don't entertain that thought. Don't ignore it. If it doesn't make sense, ignore it. You're gonna go into a pitfall where you actually delude yourself, and that is where it starts to become bad. And I will get to how bad where I believe it, where the mythology leads to. So, yeah, your sin of gluttony. Now, this is where you're sad. I don't believe gluttony is like, because sad people eat a lot. It's probably like the old way of saying, well, we don't know they're sad, but they're eating a lot. They're carrying more. They're weighing more on society than they're giving. And so that's why it was probably called gluttony, because they were more into themselves. So what happens is, as you keep entertaining thoughts, if you aren't aware that you are in this state, you're going to get sadder and sadder and sadder and sadder and sadder. And you see, we started with lust, then we got gluttonous, and now we're going to get greedy. We're going to go over here now. We're going to want to turn what that idea was into an interest. So say it was, that person gave me a weird look. And then you start making stuff up. You're like, well, why did they give me that look? Oh, it was probably because they saw me as ugly. And then now we're going to here, but now I want to know. I'm going to go and like want to have an interest in her, which is now you're greedy. You're starting to get a little, you see, and it is in order. You see, that's the scary part. It is wrathful's next. Then it's heretics, which is pride in Dante's Inferno, and then violence, sloth, envy, fraudulent, treacherous. And then I'll get to treacherous at the end. I've never really entertained treacherous thoughts before. I've gotten to fraudulent, but I've never entertained a treacherous thought. Maybe I have, actually, but I don't know. Maybe that's how I figured this out, was by entertaining a treacherous thought that I forgot. I don't know. So now it starts to get a little bit more violent. You start to get a little bit more angry. She's not giving you the answer you want. So now it's like, I need it. And then it starts to become annoying. And then it becomes anger. And then it becomes rage. This is where you like cross the river Styx. The river Styx is like the point of no return. You're in the I believe it's the fourth gate of hell, is it would be called. And what happens here is, this is where the psychological factors start coming in. So you don't actually need to be religious to believe this. I'll show you what the two psychological factors are that I have noticed instantly. I've actually done it before to someone. I was like Karen, taking their mind to that state. Obviously, I fixed it because I know how, but I've done it to someone within like 5 minutes. It's so easy to do. It's terrifying. So yeah, we have the egocentric bias, which is where you believe in yourself, like you hold yourself higher than reality itself. And then you have the confirmation bias, which is everything that, once you've found someone has said something, they is just a single person, then you will interpret everything they say the way you want to hear it. That is bad. Really bad if you're doing that. And then it becomes the sin of pride, which is where it's like you start to develop an ego now. And it is, you do develop an ego. You don't want to admit you're wrong anymore because you're right in your delusional reality that you've created or in yourself. You then go down to here, which is sloth. This is where you start to grow bored. And when you grow bored, you start to self-hate yourself. Like really, really self-hate. As you see, it ends up in loathing. And when you're in loathing, it's like, you're really self-hating. Like you're so self-hateful that you would probably, your ego in counteraction to how much you hate yourself would call you God. Like that's how bad it is. Because your sin of pride is going to grow alongside how much you hate yourself. And then it becomes envy. Now you start to hate other people for their things because they aren't giving it to you because you're the best in the world. And that's where you're starting to get to like treacherous levels.